All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome everyone. I'm so glad to see everyone here. On behalf of the entire web checkout team, thank you so much for being part of our annual user symposium. It really is because all of you here that this is possible. And I mean that from all of our customers that are here. Thank you for joining us, but also for the web checkout team. It being here today, I understand we know that it takes a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of preparation and investment. So sincerely, we appreciate you all making this possible. I appreciate you making this all possible. This is one of my favorite moments of the year. This is when we get to connect with you all and we get to share what we've been working on. It's a very unique opportunity. And most importantly, we get to hear from you. Our purpose here at Web Checkout, it is to create tools and solutions that help you all, our educators, to educate and for our student creators to create. And we love working with you as much as we love the arts and entertainment. And what is a user symposium without a little icebreaker? It's been months since we've last seen one another. So for anyone who's willing to share and participate, please share with us via chat. Recommend a good book, a movie, a show, or even a podcast. I'll go first, and I'm going to skip over the chat, but I've got a few of recommendations up here. As for movies, Wicked. I know that's a little bit basic, but if you're into great music, beautiful costume, wonderful acting, hilarious storyline, the dialogue, it's superb. For shows, I love shows even more than I love movies, but anyone watch the Netflix The Residence? I recommended that to AJ when we were last together. It's so entertaining. AJ, really good
It was a
storyline.
great watch.
The
Yeah, good recommendation.
murder mystery in the White House featuring it's an all-star cast. I adore Uzo Aduba and Gus Fringe from Breaking Bad. That's what he'll always be known as to me. Um, Good hang. If you're into podcasts, Amy Poehler. I mean, need I say more? And she had Tina Fey on her first episode. Highly recommend that. And then for books, if you all are into Seth Rogen, Yearbook was really entertaining. If you're a fan, he does not disappoint. You can hear his voice, like his chuckle, his laugh throughout the book. Really entertaining. I mean, it's not really educational, but this is all entertainment, right? So I'm looking at the chat here. Sinners, okay, AJ, that's you. Great. Yeah, keep them going. If this is part of the symposium, we're here to connect. But back to our main event though, why we're here, right? At Web Checkout, everything that we do is built and shaped around your feedback and ultimately your success. So today, not only are we excited to share what we've been working on this past year, we're also going to share some tips and tricks to improve your experience, to improve the student experience. And of course, we're going to make time for you all to connect and share with one another. So if you can take back with you at least one good new idea, make one great connection, this will be a success, and I'm sure you'll take back more than just one. So kicking us off today will be Brittany with a review of our new June 2025 release and new features, followed by AJ, who will provide some food for thought to improve efficiencies, especially for high volume checkout centers or those that manage large orders. But I promise you that these features can apply to almost all operations. It's going to improve any operations. And then we'll break for lunch. After lunch, Nicole will premiere our new documentation site, which is now integrated into the application. So accessing our documentation site will be easier than ever. And then followed by yours truly, Jeannie Clark here, where we'll talk about the web checkout roadmap and what we're up to next. And then, of course, we'll make time for discussion. We'll break out into small groups where we'll discuss, or you all will discuss, how can web checkout dramatically improve the student experience? And not just students using Patron Portal, but students using the administrative side, the web checkout side, right? So think about the entire student experience and how can web checkout dramatically improve that. So please stick with us. Do come back after lunch. And of course, there will be a Q&A session after each presentation, so feel free to chat any questions during the session and we'll address them. All right, that's it for me. Over on to Brittany and the June release.
Thank you, Jeannie. All right. Perfect. Hopefully you folks are able to see my screen. If you cannot, please let me know now. Otherwise, it will be very embarrassing in about 5 minutes. And please keep the chat going because I do need new options to binge watch specifically for movies and TV shows. All right. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to see all of the familiar names in the chat. But for those of you I haven't yet worked with, my name is Brittany Wood, and I'm going to be leading our morning session. So over the next hour, we are going to preview the newest version of Web Checkout, which is our June 2025 release. So during this session, we're going to highlight key features and improvements on the latest and greatest version. Now, if you are on an older version and you do require a much more in-depth session reviewing changes from your current version up through June 2025, I do recommend a more individualized training session, but this session will cover the basics of all of the features and highlights specifically found on June 2025. So we're going to start with just a brief overview on what to expect over the next hour. So some key highlights we're going to cover today include we have introduced a more efficient and streamlined operator override process. Personally, I'm most excited about this, and this includes clearer language on error and override warnings, an explicit one and done override process, and the ability to now save reservations with pending overrides for managers to approve later. Additionally, for those of you with the project module, patrons can now propose their own projects via the patron portal. And we've also included project status to help you to better manage the project lifecycle. We've also made some improvements to accessories and components, which we'll review today. And we've added a few enhancements to the mobile inventory app, so you can find your equipment during the inventory process. And then finally, we are going to quickly highlight our new documentation site this morning. So first, we're going to start by reviewing improvements to the allocation process, and we're actually going to begin in the patron portal. Now, anytime I'm doing new version reviews, I always like to begin in the patron portal because I know most of my clients are always really concerned about the impact to their users and what students are especially going to experience. Now, if you are on a newer version of Web Checkout, so June 2024, December 2024, you're going to be delighted to hear that for the most part, it's a very consistent reservation process. So if we start by creating a reservation, you're going to notice a lot of consistency. Users are still greeted with the message of the day. They will still choose their start and end times. They'll still be required to include any required and optional details. And then finally, they'll choose the items that they want to reserve. So overall, the process is very consistent with what users are really used to within the patron portal. However, now that we've started to create our new reservation, I want to highlight that there are some errors here within the reservation. And this is where I want to just highlight a few of those improvements to the language on the error messages. So within both the patron portal, and we'll notice this also within web checkout, we've improved the error messages that folks will review as they're trying to resolve these errors and save their reservation. So if we take a look at these errors, we can clearly see that some types are limited. So unfortunately, I'm trying to reserve 2 Sony kits, and I'm only allowed to reserve 1. And additionally, one of my items is unavailable. So hopefully this will help your students clean up those errors a bit quicker. So let's go ahead and resolve this error, and we'll go ahead and submit this reservation. So overall, the process is very much the same, upgrading to the latest version, June 2025, with that added improvement of the error language. Now, the other exciting new feature that's available within the patron portal is really for those folks with the project module. So we're going to hop over and take a look at our projects within the patron portal. So in the June 2025 version, patrons can now propose projects via the patron portal. So you'll notice this brand new action button right here, propose projects, and I can simply select this button. I'll be prompted to choose the section as well as the project. This is a project template that I'm building or proposing my project off of. So I'm going to propose a project for the end of the semester showcase, select continue, and from here I'll be required to include a few details, including the project name and note. So I'm going to say that this is Brittany, end of semester showcase. And of course, we'll include some notes. This is going to be really good. All right. So let's go ahead and submit this proposed project. So I do just want to highlight here the difference between my active projects and my proposed projects right here. So we will be discussing a little bit later how to actually enable proposed projects for those of you that are using the projects module, but we're also going to highlight the difference between these 2 different statuses that you're seeing associated with these projects up on the screen. So stay tuned if you're interested about learning a little bit more about projects and how to enable proposed projects via the patron portal. So now that we've taken a look at a few improvements via the patron portal, we're going to hop on over into web checkout and take a look at a few improvements to the allocation process. All right. So now up on the screen, you should notice web checkout. So of course, this is the main admin application, and this is where operators can work to manage your inventory, create reservations, and check out equipment to your checkout centers. And again, I always like to highlight the consistency. So if you're upgrading from the June version or the December 2024 version, the reservation process again is going to feel very similar. So users will still create a reservation by selecting this new reservation icon. They will enter in those required details. So we're going to create a reservation, include our pickup and return times, and then select continue. And here again, we'll add our contents. Well, bear with me one moment, folks. All right, so let's create that reservation one more time. There we go. All right. So overall, I always like to highlight the consistency. When you create a reservation, you'll still include the patron, your start and end time, and of course, the items that we are reserving. Now, as we start to create the reservation, I want to highlight here that you're going to notice some new action buttons and also some changes to what was previously the overrides header right here. Now, one of the key improvements that I am the most excited to review today is the updates to the override process in web checkout. So overrides are essential for many checkout centers because it really allows you to make a one-time exception that may be different from the policies that you typically follow. In previous versions of web checkout, overrides were really implicit, and we got a lot of feedback about this. So if the operator had the proper override capabilities, they could simply save that reservation without really reviewing or confirming that they've actually acknowledged some of these policy violations. So now in the June 2025 version, we've really improved this process to require a more explicit override process and better accountability with your operators. So again, you're going to notice that there are some override approvals that are required, which you can clearly state right here using this approvals required header. Now, in previous versions, we could simply select save reservations and ignore these messages. However, now operators can select manage approvals to perform or approve those overrides. So if we select manage approvals, a modal will open where we can view some additional details and actually approve those overrides. Now, I do want to highlight that more user-friendly language that we saw within the patron portal is also carried over here into web checkout. So again, we can see that this resource type requires authorization, and unfortunately, Winnie is not authorized to use this red kit. Now, in order to approve these overrides, operators can select the checkboxes of the overrides they want to approve, or they can use select authorized or select all. Select authorized will only select the overrides that the logged in operator is allowed to approve based on their own operator capabilities. While select all is simply going to select all of the overrides that you see on this modal right now. Now, the ability to actually approve these overrides, that's still based on those same operator capabilities. So nothing has changed there. If the operator has that override capability, they will be able to approve that override. And if they are required to enter their PIN, they will still be required to enter their PIN as they are approving these overrides and confirming that reservation or checkout. So let's go ahead and approve these. All right. So now that we have approved these overrides, we can clearly see that the approvals are granted based on the change in this header right here. And we can now confirm this reservation. So let's go ahead and save our work. Now, in addition to this new override process, which really allows for a better accountability and also that improved language, this is a one and done override process. So this means now that those overrides, once they've been approved, operators no longer need to override those same, they no longer need to approve those overrides again at pickup. So it really streamlines that process. All right. So if we wanted to pick it up, we can simply select check availability. Let's just pick up this reservation a little bit early. Web checkout will still ask us to confirm. All right. Now, many of you may be familiar with this workflow of overriding policy violations when you create reservations, but we've also introduced a brand new allocation or override workflow, allowing operators to save reservations with policy violations so that a manager can approve at a later time. Now, this approval workflow can be adjusted based on a new setting that you'll find in your Checkout Center detail screens. So if we navigate into Admin, Checkout Center, and into the Allocations tab, we scroll down, there will be a new setting called Require Approvals to Save. So this new setting will be enabled by default post-upgrade to ensure you have that same consistent override process, right? So approvals are still going to be required as operators are creating reservations within web checkout. However, if you would now like to allow your operators to save reservations with those overrides that require approval, this setting can be turned off. So let's go ahead and disable this setting. Now, this workflow may work best for checkout centers where operators have really limited override capabilities, and managers want to be able to actually review and approve those overrides themselves. So you can limit those capabilities assigned to your student workers. So now that we've adjusted our settings, let's go ahead and try it out. So again, we're going to create a reservation. For Tim. There we go. And I'm going to edit the end time. All right, and let's add in our computers. All right. Now I do really want to note, as we have adjusted that setting, that setting really impacts the reservation process only. Checkouts will still require overrides prior to saving. Additionally, the setting only affects web checkout. It does not affect the patron portal. Patrons must still follow your policies in the patron portal. All right. So now that we've created a reservation with pending approvals, let's go ahead and take a look at the error and approval summary. So right here, I just want to highlight that errors are still, will still display in web checkout if an item is unavailable. So I did just want to demo that because errors are different than overrides. You cannot override an error because that indicates that an item is unavailable. If an item is unavailable, though, you can always select that icon, replace it with another available item of that type, use our new request feature, which I think AJ is going to talk about a little bit later, and we can add to the turn down report. But for now, I'm going to remove that item to request the error so that we can focus on these overrides or approvals, which are now required. So now, as we're creating a reservation, I want to highlight two action buttons. So you'll notice that we still have manage approvals, which will allow operators to approve those overrides. However, you'll also notice confirm reservations. This will allow operators to save the reservations with all of these outstanding or overrides, which are not approved. All right. So today we're going to confirm this reservation, and we can clearly see that approval is still required. We have not approved any of these overrides. So now that we've saved a reservation that still requires an override approval, you may be asking yourself how managers and admins can clearly review and approve these overrides. So of course, if you really wanted to, you could review the allocations individually and manage overrides within the allocation detail screen, just like we saw earlier with our other allocation. However, we've also introduced a new report to make this process much more efficient. So if we navigate over to Admin, under the Admin menu, there is a brand new override report. And if we select Find, we can view all of those outstanding overrides, which we could approve en masse. So this report will allow managers or admins to view and approve those allocation overrides en masse. So rather than approving individually with each individual allocation, we can approve all of these. And I do want to highlight that this includes approvals from multiple allocations, all in the click of one button. So let's go ahead and select all, and we'll approve pending. And now we're going to go back and take a look at that reservation we just created. So now taking a look at that reservation, you can see that those overrides are now approved, and the operator can simply proceed with picking up that reservation without the need to perform any overrides, right? As long as nothing has changed. So as long as there's no edits, no additional items, no approval is necessary. So let's see if we can pick up a bit early, and we can. All right. So now that we've had a chance to preview some of those new error warning messages, I know it was a little difficult viewing my screen, but I do want to introduce you to some new details that will be available to web checkout admins, just to provide a bit more clarity on these messages. So not only have we, improved the actual messages as they'll read, but we've also provided some help within web checkout, just in case we do need a bit more clarity. So if we navigate to the admin tab, into global settings, and these are found in global settings, so only admins with Alter systems will be able to access this. There will be two new tabs available, this validation tab right here and this circulation tab right here. Now, these two tabs basically provide information about those override and error messages that you saw when we were circulating resources. So if you do want to learn a little bit more post-upgrade, I would encourage you to take a look within the global detail screen. Now, as you are considering upgrading to the newest version, this is a really opportune time to review your operator capabilities, right? The roles that are assigned and the capabilities that are assigned to those roles, just to ensure you have assigned users or operators with the proper override capabilities. And also it's a good time to consider which override workflow will ultimately work best for you. Now, while we're talking about operator capabilities and overrides, I do want to introduce you also now to a brand new operator capability. So if we take a look at My Person Data, and in my Operator Info tab, scrolling down, we have a brand new operator capability called Override Signature Required. So this is really intended for those checkout centers that have Require Signature on File enabled. With this operator capability, only operators with this override will be able to allocate resources to patrons without a signature on file date. If this is disabled for that user, or this capability is not assigned with that user, they will be unable to check out or reserve equipment for patrons that do not have a signature on file included within their patron detail screen. Now, if you're wondering if this setting's enabled at your checkout center, I totally understand. So to double check if this setting is enabled, I'll show you where to find it. So you can check in your current version. So if you navigate to Admin, Checkout Center, and in the Allocations tab, again, we'll scroll all the way down to Allocation Properties, and you'll want to look for a setting called Require Signature on File. If this is enabled, you will want to take a look at that operator capability post-upgrade. right? If this is not enabled, then you are currently not using signature on file. So please go ahead and just double check if you're using this setting or not, because if you are, you may want to consider granting that override capability to at least some of your operators post-upgrade. All right. So now that we've reviewed quite a few improvements to circulation, we're going to now highlight just a few enhancements to resources. So we're going to search for my Sony kit. And we're going to look in the components tab because overall we've made a few improvements to containers and accessories. So containers typically list items within a kit. So these contained items circulate with my Sony A7R kit, and these are individual resources. And accessories are typically those low dollar ancillary items that circulate with a resource. Now for containers and kits, we've introduced two new enhancements here. So for components, not only can you add resources individually and import en masse, but you can also add components manually en masse using this new multi-selection tool. So if we use this action button right here, a modal will appear where we can search for a few resources. And I'm going to look for some items that are available and circulating. So if I know that I imported 10 resources and they all need to be added to the kit, I no longer have to do that individually. I can now select the checkboxes, confirm selected, and just like that, I've added about 6 items to this kit. But just make sure that you save your work before navigating away. All right. Now, the other new feature that I want to highlight is an improvement to accessories. So in previous versions, we were unable to set a specific sort order for accessories. Now I'm happy to share that using this icon, which is found to the left of each accessory, we can reorder the list order of accessories. So if I wanted my lens cap to appear at the top of the list, I would simply drag and drop the order. Again, we'll want to save our work, and this will change that list order of accessories when operators are viewing details or viewing on a print agreement form. All right. So again, I just updated the order and lens cap is at the top. And if we hop over to this allocation and view the details, looking at the accessories, lens cap is the first accessory that we are going to see. So I know those look pretty small on the screen, but they can be pretty impactful for the right clients. All right. Now, the next area that I'm really excited to highlight are the improvements to the Projects app. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with this module, the Project app opens circulations to a project, allowing you to plan, gather, and manage events and course-related assignments in web checkouts. Now, earlier, I demonstrated how patrons can propose their own projects through the patron portal. So again, you should see the patron portal up on your screen. And this is the project that we proposed earlier. So now we're going to review how we can actually enable projects to be proposed by patrons via the patron portal. All right. Now, allowing patrons to create their own projects through the patron portal really requires 2 key elements. So you must have an active group with an active section and section members. That whole chain has to be active. And additionally, you will need to have an active project template. So you should be able to create groups, sections, and members in your current version, as well as project templates in your current version of Web Checkout if you have the projects module. So these two elements are required because to enable, we are essentially going to apply groups to those project templates as proposed groups. So this will allow active section members of that group to propose projects based on a project template. So you do have a little bit of control over what they can approve, what they can propose. It's not an open-ended project template unless you really want it to be based on your template. All right. So first we have to ensure that we have at least one active group with active sections and members. So jumping back into Web Checkout, you can always view your groups by navigating to Authorizations, Find Groups, and selecting this blue Find page. And I clearly have more than enough groups to make this work. Now, we don't have enough time today to do an in-depth review of groups. So if you are new to groups, I would encourage you to review our documentation or reach out to the Web Checkout team to schedule some training. Now, in addition to groups, you also must ensure that you have a project template created. And again, patrons will create projects based upon that template. So if we hop into the Projects app, you'll notice that I already have a project template open and created for the graduate thesis short. Now, project templates can be created in the Project app using this button right here. So by creating a new project template, or you can import project templates en masse using an import spreadsheet. Now, once we have groups and an active project template within the project template, you can use this new proposed groups area in order to assign groups to the project template. So again, we just have to have those two key elements and add those groups as proposed groups. So let's add one new group and submit. And now I have two different groups that can propose this project via the patron portal. So again, once we've added this group, any active section member of that group may propose projects via the patron portal. All right. Now, while we're here in the Project tab, I also want to highlight another improvement to projects, which is project status. So if we jump over and take a look at all of my projects, and we're going to add a few different statuses just to view. So to help manage proposed projects and the project lifecycle in general, we have introduced project status. So in this column right here, you can see that we have both active and proposed projects in this current report. So operators can view status in this Find Project screen, but they can also view this project status in the project detail screen. So right here. Additionally, operators can now search for status in the Find Project screen using this new search term. So for those of you that are managing many projects and you want to be able to search specifically for proposed projects, I do recommend getting very familiar with this status search term because it will make it much easier to execute the correct reports. Now, project status can be managed individually in the project detail screen or via this Find Project screen. So if we take a look at this proposed project, you'll notice that there are specific actions to managing the project status that only relates to the current status of this proposed project. So I could accept the project, decline the project, or destroy the project. However, for those of you that manage dozens of projects and not just 6 projects like I have up on my screen, You can also edit project status in bulk on this Find Project screen by selecting one or multiple projects and using this More Info button to view a whole list of action buttons right here. Now, since there are so many options, I do quickly just want to review what each of these do. So you'll notice an accept option. So this will allow you to approve and allow that proposed project. And again, those proposed projects are the project that patrons are proposing via the patron portal. You can also decline a project, which allows you to reject one of those proposed projects. You can suspend a project, placing that project, an active project, on a temporary hold. You can complete that project, basically stating that the project has been successfully finished. You can discontinue that project, marking the project as incomplete and no longer in progress. Or you can reopen a project, which allows you to reopen a completed, discontinued, or suspended project. So now that we have a few definitions to work with, let's go ahead and accept our proposed projects. So again, I'm just going to search for my proposed projects, select the project that I want to approve or accept, and then select that correct action button. Now, once we edit the status, of course, that will change the status of the project. So it will now be listed as an active project. And additionally, when the patron is viewing their projects via the patron portal, that project will no longer be listed under proposed projects. They will now see it as an active project within the patron portal. All right. Now, the final module that we will review improvements to is the mobile inventory app. And this is often referred to as MIA. Now, the mobile inventory app allows operators to complete a physical inventory of resources using this mobile-friendly interface. So overall, the improvements that were added for June 2025 help operators to locate items when they are completing an inventory. So the first improvement I want to highlight is the addition of the suitcase icons right here. So if an item is contained within a kit referred to as a container in web checkout, these icons clearly let the operator know that that item is contained within a kit. And these are also clickable, so we can see that this should be included in that Sony kit. Additionally, if a kit component is currently checked out or it's late on a checkout, those kit components will now use those same icons to indicate if that item is late or checked out. Now, in addition to the updated icons, which you'll notice in the MIA, in the mobile inventory app, we've also included more details to really help operators locate those items. So if we take a look at an item that we're unable to locate, you can see that we now include many more details than in previous versions of web checkout. So we can view the item's manufacturer, the model number. My favorites are the addition of all of the location info. So not only can you see home location, but you can view the shelf location, the location note, as well as that serial number and MAC address if for some reason the barcode is scratched off or the tag has been taken off of an item. So more details to help folks locate these items correctly. Now, the other improvement that we added into MIA is more so for the managers that are actually managing the inventory projects and reviewing the notes at the end of the project. So let's go ahead and send a note to the manager. Now, notes are typically used to communicate issues with your manager. So if you're unable to locate an item, if an item has a condition note change, or a home location change, all of that is communicated through notes. within the mobile inventory app. So managers can click through these notes to view more details. However, now in the June 2025 version, operators can now copy these notes. So if you want to include that to an outside to-do list or a set of details for this project, you can now go ahead and copy those notes and put them outside of web checkout into your own to-do list. All right, now finally, the very final improvement that we're going to review today is to our documentation site. Now, the documentation site is still accessible by selecting this question mark icon, but just as you heard earlier, you no longer have to log in with a separate username and password. As long as you are logged in to web checkout, you can access our documentation site. So we no longer have to manage a separate username or password. Now we are really excited to review our new documentation site. So I do recommend you stick around this afternoon to hear from Nicole, where she will be doing a more in-depth review of our new documentation site. Now, for those of you that are really excited about what you saw here today, if you are ready to upgrade now, please feel free to reach out to support@webcheckout.net. They will work with you to ensure that the server meets those minimum requirements and schedule the upgrade with you. All right, now thank you all so much for your time today. I really appreciate everyone joining us this morning, especially the folks on the West Coast where it's a little early. So now let's go ahead and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Brittany. I learned so much from you and from these webinars. If it wasn't for these webinars and actually your time in teaching, I'd be stuck on version like 13.0, right? Okay. There are a few questions.
Vintage.
Yeah. And actually just some overwhelming like feedback on the improvements to the operator override. So we're thrilled that you are all excited for the June release. There were two questions posted from Eric. Do the circulation override settings still exist as before? And I believe
So the operator capabilities, I think that's what we're talking about.
yeah, and Eric, feel free to go off mute if you wanted to clarify or discuss, but there were no changes to the actual operator capabilities or overrides that they currently hold. So with the exception of the new override for require signature on file, if your existing override capabilities will remain and will persist as you upgrade, right?
Got it.
Okay, and Eric, did that address your, okay, great. I'm glad that it addressed your question. And the second question, referring back to the mobile inventory app, um, are the fields customizable in MIA and which fields are displayed? And Eric, are you referring to the project itself or the resource details that are displayed? So what fields on the resource are displayed? The resource details. So Brittany, I believe those are not configurable, what's displayed. We have,
Mhm.
it is what of these fields, and you are displaying all of the available fields.
So I believe I'm including all of the available fields, but it is a lot. So I do recommend reviewing our documentation that we will update regarding June 2025. But I do believe I've listed all of them here, but they are not customizable.
Right. And if you're not using IP address, for example, it would not appear on this.
Correct.
Okay.
You got it.
Great. Thank you for the question. Excellent questions. And thanks for the answer there, Brittany. Another question, sticking to the mobile inventory app, notes. Can notes be extracted for the project as a whole instead of us having to copy and paste them one by one? Great question. We understand the feedback too. At this point, it's just copying. But as we talk about our roadmap today and improving the experience like this and getting feedback from you all, this feature of being able to export the notes is something we can absolutely discuss and take into consideration for future improvements to the mobile inventory app. You bet. Thanks for the question, Becky. And Migdio asks, is the MIA a module by itself? It sure is. It sure is. And AJ is actually going to announce a great summer deal that might entice you all to get onto the mobile inventory app this summer. Start your summer inventory projects early. Um, any other questions for Brittany or regarding the June release? And Brittany is working on a beta version. As I mentioned, it takes time and preparation to get the data all set up. So the release version it's been tested. You all should really enjoy the new features. And as she mentioned, feel free to email support now to schedule your update. Support loves these webinars. We really truly enjoy upgrading you all to the latest release. You guys get access to the new features and and that's what we're here for. All right, great. Thanks, Brittany. Thanks for your time. If you all have any more questions, feel free to chat them and we can address them. And now we'll turn it over to AJ for tips on, or what we call hacks or tips or tricks for improving efficiencies at your centers. AJ, on to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jeannie. I am AJ Ootman. I think most of you at this point know me, but I am an account manager here at Web Checkout, and your host for this section. So I have worked at Web Checkout for a little over 5 years. And I know many of you on the call. So some of you that have really large volumes of equipment, some that have really small volumes, and kind of everything in between. But what I'm curious about today is, what is like your average checkout size look like? I am going to be launching a poll. So if you could please submit your answer for what the average checkout size is. And when I say checkout size, I mean each individual item. If it's a kit with a bunch of things in it, that can just count as one. So let me launch this poll. Okay. All right, so you all should see a poll on your Zoom screen. So small, I'm listing as about 1 to 5 resources that typically gets checked out. Medium, 6 to 12. Large, 12 to 50. Extra large, 50 to 100. And massive, over 100 resources. So if all of you can just take that poll, we'll give just a few minutes there. I'm curious if some of my massive clients are on the call. I can see that some are. Okay. All right, great. And so Nick, great question. So checkout specifically, so stuff that people pick up. What is like the typical size for that? Yep. And Eric, I hear you, small, but a lot of kits and containers. Okay, that's great. All right, we'll give just like maybe one more minute to fill out this poll just because I am really curious what everybody's typical checkout size is. And again, if you're doing a kit that's in like, a Pelican case, you can just count that as like one resource. All right, I see from Ian also a lot of kits and containers. Yep, that's great. I have heard from a lot of clients that's one of the main reasons they use our software is how we set up kits, which is why those new improvements Brittany showed I'm particularly excited about. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So here we go. And I am going to share those results. All right, so from the results, right, you all can see the results. It looks like there's kind of a mix. About a third of you have smaller checkouts. The other third actually has larger checkouts, so that 12 to 50 range. And then there's a few of you that have the extra large as well as the massive. Um, Now, I am curious who on the call has the largest checkout. So just thinking about your last semester, or maybe even this summer, any that you can recall, for those of you that are the over 100 resources, if you selected that, what is the largest checkout you remember doing this last semester? So if you want to just pop that into chat. I'm just really curious what the largest is. I think the largest one of my clients had that they told me was right around 1,000. But I'm curious if someone on the call can beat that. All right. Great. Well, as we all know, some things can start off small and then get really big. Here you can see on screen my cat Glinda. On the left is the day I adopted her from the shelter. She crawled into my hand and fell asleep in it, and I could fit her in one palm. Well, now she is big enough that she doesn't even fit under our entry rug. So she's gotten a lot bigger. Well, just like my cat, we know that your inventories oftentimes grow and will continue to grow. Speaking of big inventories, I see in the chat, Lauren posted 300 plus. So I think right now that's our largest on the call. Thanks for sharing that, Lauren. Well, today I'm going to go over some features that will significantly help with efficiency no matter your checkout center size. But especially for those of you that are on that larger end, we know that efficiency is the hallmark of getting your equipment out quickly to those that are approved to have that equipment and having workflows that also get it back into your center in a streamlined fashion. So I'm going to go over some features that hopefully can help. Today, I'm going to start with features specifically for your staff and patrons that are reserving through the patron portal. Those features I've listed on screen. So I'm first going to showcase projects, how this can help you to gather all of your requirements and as well as make sure that everybody on that project is approved to check out the equipment to that project. I'll then be talking about categories and attributes. So this is a relatively new feature we have out available that can allow you to use descriptive properties so that your patrons can narrow down their searches in Patron Portal rather than looking through all of your equipment. Bundles, I know a number of you on the call are using and are familiar with. This can allow you to bundle together related types, significantly speeding up your booking process. Then I'm going to talk about requests. Again, this is one of our newer features. This will allow you to approve restricted equipment or equipment that's currently unavailable for some of the outlier use cases that you might have, which can really help minimize the amount of back and forth you have with sending manual emails. Okay, so this is again from the patron portal side. Looking at the staff side specifically, I'm going to talk about how preventative maintenance tickets can create reminders for you so that you don't have to keep track of all of your scheduling. You can just schedule a ticket to automatically go out. I'll also be showing staging that can track the pre-packing process of your orders. I know my clients that have, close to 1,000 items on checkouts use this every day. And then I'll talk about our mobile inventory application, how it can really narrow the scope of your inventory. So if you're going through tens of thousands of items, you can narrow that down to just the items you're wanting to inventory at any given time. Okay. All right. So we're going to be starting with our projects module, and I'm going to be going into Patron Portal as my student, Samuel Powers, who's going to be submitting a project for approval. Now, projects can greatly help with managing equipment for not only class projects, but you can think about this as for events even. You can think about it as for maker spaces, for engineering projects, anything where you need to plan and gather and manage event and course related materials. Okay. Now, this gives you the assurance that any project, whether it's student or staff, has been approved and that they're following your policies. And as you saw from Brittany's demonstration, we now have patron initiated projects. So Samuel is going to select his projects tab and he's going to propose a new project for his senior thesis. All right, and he'll select the project type, advanced documentary film, and we'll select continue. All right. Now, when Samuel's proposing this new project, as Brittany addressed, he has to be a part of some type of group, and he is. It's a senior thesis. And he'll need to give his project a title. So we'll put that project name as Saved by Sunny Days. And then he'll add a note just noting what this is for. All right. So this is a documentary on the positive effects of sun exposure in a digital world. And I'll hit submit. Great. Well, the students in my center are used to anytime they propose a project, they know there's a bunch of paperwork that we need. So Samuel's just going to click on his proposed project and see it's still gray, right? He just proposed it. It has not yet been approved. But he's going to scroll down because he knows we always require insurance waivers. So he's going to hit this add attachment. We'll browse and select his insurance waiver. Okay. And is going to click where it asks, did you attach an insurance waiver? He's going to select from the drop down yes. Okay. This is a custom property that I added, which helps me remind my students what they need to attach. The second custom property I added reminds him, did you attach a crew list? He didn't do that. So he's going to go back down, hit add attachment, and we'll add his crew list. Great. And then we'll also check the yes on that box. Okay. All right. Well, that's all that he's required to initially submit at our center. We can ask him for more paperwork later. But I'm now going to switch gears and put on my administrator hat and go into my projects module to see this project that Samuel submitted. So I'll switch over to my projects module. Here's a list of all of my active projects, but when I come in, I can click Find Projects and select Find Project Proposals for any new proposal that's come in. And I see this project proposal from Samuel, Saved by Sunny Days, so I'll click on it. Because at my center, we have that workflow where they have to submit their insurance as well as their crew list, I'm just going to scroll right down to see if he's done it. He did reference yes for both, that he did attach both those things. So I'm going to go ahead and accept the project. Now, once I've accepted it, this project that he proposed is part of a project template that I pre-created. So a number of the values have already been filled in for me, so there's not a lot I need to do. The only things I'm going to do is I'm going to change this policy class to my advanced filmography policy class. The reason I'm doing that is normally we only allow students to check out 50 pieces of equipment at a time. But with projects like this, we allow it to go up to 500 at a time. So varying your policy classes is another way that you can really help manage those large inventories because you can tailor your policies to the specific project. I'm also going to enable this calendar feeds because these thesis projects have so many checkouts. I want to make sure that Samuel can get this calendar feed and pop it into his iCal or his Google Calendar to make sure he can keep track of all these different checkouts. Okay, great. Now, I have also enabled an additional custom property, assign screening room. So I'm going to assign them Studio One. As you can see, these custom properties are really helpful for the administrators and your patrons because you can ask information from your patrons like, did they attach an insurance waiver? Did they attach a crew list? As well as you can assign things like their studios or the spaces they're going to pick up so that they can see that in Patron Portal and you don't have so much manual emails that you're sending. Under the roles, I've also in this template pre-populated all of the roles that are a part of this project. If I review their crew list, I can then just start jotting in people in these roles. Samuel only submitted a couple roles, so I'm going to add them now. I'll add my director of photography, which is Kelly Kapowski. And I've already listed all of the capabilities that she has, so I don't need to do anything else. Same thing with the producer. This will be AC Slater. And again, in the template, I pre-populated all of these roles capabilities. So I'm just adding the people just to keep this really fast and streamlined. All right, great. Well, as the administrator, that's all I'm going to do. Everything else looks good for this project, and I've already greenlit it. I'm going to shift gears and go back into Patron Portal as Samuel Powers, and he'll just refresh his screen. He can now see that this project has in fact been greenlit. He could look through and review any of the custom properties that the administrators added. He could take that project calendar feed, pop it in his Google Calendar, and review any of the roles that have been added to this particular project. This all looks good to Samuel, so he's ready to start a new reservation, and we'll click the new button. Okay. He'll select his checkout center, hit OK. See our message of the day. That's great. And then we'll start by selecting his start and end times. So he's going to be picking up tomorrow at 1 p.m., going to Friday, that looks great, at 2 p.m. That project that just got approved, he'll select Save by Sunny Days. We'll save it. And is going to agree to our terms and conditions. All right. Patron Portal is so intuitive. It just tells him your cart is empty. So hit Browse Catalog to add items. When he hits Browse Catalog, at my center, I have our default as searching by attribute. Attributes and categories are descriptive features so that you can narrow down your scope of your search. This is used by Amazon, B&H, basically any storefront you can think of online. Because when you have huge inventories like B&H, adding descriptive features can really help the patrons or the clients narrow down their searches. So Samuel's going to use this search button. Great. And then sees all of the attributes we've made available to help narrow down his searches. He's wanting to look for cameras that will match a particular lens mount that he knows he's going to need. So he'll click this lens mount and going to select the EF mount. Great. And he's also wanting to ensure that it only pulls up cameras and lenses that can match that have a 4K resolution. Okay, so he'll add that. Now, he could narrow it down further with all of these attributes, but he just has a couple requirements. So he's going to use those two attributes to search. Great. That narrows it down to the cameras and the lenses that match those particular attributes. Great. So he's going to select the camera Canon EOS 5D, and we'll hit the plus icon to add one of this type. Now he's going to look for his lens to match. So I'll go back to that search modal because he wants to add an additional attribute. You may notice that his previous attribute saved. You could always remove those if you need, but he just wants to add an additional lens type, telephoto to it. Hit search. Great. And then that'll pull up just the lenses that will match that EF mount. So it's going to match the camera he has, as well as that have that telephoto lens. He'll select his Zeus lens and hit the plus icon to add that. Great. All right, well, now that Sam has looked for some of his higher end pieces of equipment, he's now going to go through his typical order and add a bundle to this order. He'll use his save list that you can find in this top left-hand corner and can add some of the saved items that he typically checks out. So he's going to add this field report bundle, and we'll select the plus icon to add the field report bundle. Now, for those of you not familiar with bundles, you may have noticed that originally we just checked out or reserved, sorry, those 2 items. And now that item count jumped to 8. That's because in this bundle, there are 6 items that automatically added by type. When you add bundles, it can really speed up the process in reserving because it's adding that full group of equipment that you've created. All right. Well, Samuel now looks through his equipment and his DP Kelly looks it over as well. And they realize they also need to add a drone because they've had a number of aerial shots. So I'll hit browse catalog. He's going to use that same saved list function, right? Once students start using it, this is so intuitive. He'll add his DJI Mini 2 drone. Great. And when he's about to add it, you may notice that here we have our requests icon. That's because, as Samuel can see, he is not certified. That's why there's this red certification not granted. So what happened with Samuel is last year when he was a junior, he took an aerial class and got certified for the drone. But these drones are specifically set aside for the aerial classes because our institution doesn't have enough to dedicate them to all film classes. However, because he was previously certified and needs this for his senior thesis project, he's going to go ahead and request it and see if that will be approved. He's dually going to just add a note in the allocation notes to help encourage his administrator to approve this. So he'll add in that he was certified for the DJI drone last semester and he needs this to complete his thesis project. Okay. All right. Well, Samuel, this looks good to him, so he's going to hit submit reservation. And now we'll wait to see if that requested item is approved. All right. I'm going to change gears again and put on my hat as an administrator, and I'll now go into our operator portal. On my operator portal, I've added 2 drop-down columns to my front page, staging and request item count. Because we have really high volumes of equipment, using staging as well as requests is really key to our workflow. Staging, you'll see in a minute, will help us with the pre-packing process, and requests helps us because just like with Sam's use case, we have so much equipment that there are occasionally outlier needs and people that need to request equipment. I don't have time to filter through all of their manual emails or all of their phone calls. If they can just request it, I can review it and approve or deny. So it really helps streamline our process so that I have less students reaching out directly to me. So I'm going to go into the CKID because I do see there is one request on it. And I'm going to review that requested item, see if I approve. Here I see my reserve tab and then my request tab. I'll go ahead and select request. And I see that he's requesting the DJI Mini 2 drone. Now, I could always go into Samuel's account and see what groups he was approved of previously or what certifications he had. But Samuel was smart. He jogged my memory and said he was certified for this last semester. I remember that he was. So I'm just going to hit edit reservation, and I'll go ahead and give it a thumbs up and approve this. And I'm just going to manage that approval and approve it. That's great. And we'll save the reservation. Great. Well, when I was approving, I can see that he's planning to come in tomorrow. So I'm going to want to just stage this reservation to have everything pre-packed on our cart prior to tomorrow's checkout. So I'll go ahead and hit stage reservation. And this will help me to track everything that's been moved from our shelf to our cart that's going to go out to Samuel. The other benefit to staging is multiple operators can perform this at any given time. So if to, I believe it was Laura's point earlier, or Lauren, sorry, you have 300 plus items, you can get multiple student workers, have them on their own operator portal, and all be staging the reservation at the same time. So I'm going to simulate that now by pasting in a bunch of barcodes. So let's imagine we are all staging as quickly as we can, and they all add very, very quickly. Well, as we're staging, I'm imagining another student comes in my office and is asking me about our rules regarding reserving our labs. My student worker also needs to run to their class, and then I go ahead and take lunch. So I totally leave the center and then come back an hour or so later. Well, with staging, what's so nice is right from my front screen, I can see that 78% is staged. So I know, right, I've got a little left to do to pre-pack this order. So I'm just going to go in now while I have time, go right back to stage reservation and continue staging these items. I'm going to scan in those 2 items. When I scan them in, you'll notice this orange alert. If I click on it, it tells me that this barcode matches a resource that is currently checked out. I know that this morning we got a number of huge checkouts returned back to us, and I don't think my student worker had gone through all of them. So even though this item, I can see it, it's in my center, I don't think it was properly checked back in. So what's really nice with staging is I can return and check it back in, or sorry, return it and stage it all at the same time. I'll click this return arrow. It'll verify that I want to return and rescan it. Yes, I do. Great. And so now that adds all of my items. Well, as I was scanning in all of these items, I realized that Samuel didn't add an extension cord. Most of the students in his class have needed extension cords for their projects. They've actually needed a bunch of them. So I'm just going to add this to his order so that he doesn't ask for it later. With staging, you don't even need to leave this modal. If you have new items you're adding to the order, you can just scan them in. You will see this alert icon. If I click on it, it just tells me it's not matching any item to be scanned, but no worries. I can hit the plus icon, add it to this reservation, and scan it in. Great. All right, well, now everything is fully staged. This is all in my cart. It's ready to go. When Samuel comes in, I can simply check availability, hit pickup, and wheel him the cart. Okay. Now, let's imagine that a couple days have gone by and I've relogged into web checkout and Samuel's bringing those items back. I, of course, could use my rapid return modal to return the items, but if I'm envisioning this as a huge cart, right, I'm going to want to use batch scan to scan all of my items in. So me and my student workers can scan all of the items as quickly as possible and just mass input them. Because at my center, since our volume is so high, I do require students to scan items because I want to make sure they don't miss anything. So I'm wanting to find this balance between not missing anything or making a mistake, but scanning things quickly. So let's go into this allocation, and I'm going to use that batch scan feature. In the barcode input, it looks like three dots and lines here. I can click that, and then I can start batch scanning everything in. I'm imagining my student worker and I start scan, 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 adding all of these items in mass, hit continue, and it returns all of those items, ensuring each of them was scanned in. Now, we recognize that your staff will not only process checkouts, but you have a number of responsibilities at your center. Things like making sure the office is clean, making sure you periodically inventory items, making sure your lenses are clean, your cords are working, and a number of other duties that you have to perform. With those large centers, we have tools at your disposal in order to keep track of your inventory, as well as to set periodic reminders for the type of things that you need to follow up on. That's why I use our repair and preventative maintenance module, and I set tickets to my student workers and to myself to remind me of all the things I need to do. If I click on this tickets tab, daily I check my open tickets, and I can see that I have a new ticket that's been assigned to me. If I click on that ticket, it'll tell me in the summary what I'm supposed to do. Create an inventory project for student workers to inventory all camera dollies. Well, that jogs my memory. That's right. During the summer months is when we typically inventory. Our inventory is so massive, though, I don't ever have them do everything at once. Instead, I use our mobile inventory app to break it down into manageable sections of our inventory. So I'm going to go into my mobile inventory app and set up an inventory that's just for my camera dollies. Okay. Here I'm in my mobile inventory app, and I can see all of my open active projects. I'm going to click on my sandwich icon, then select the plus icon to start a new inventory project. I'm going to list this as my summer dolly inventory project. Great. And under my description, I'm going to add a number of things for my student workers to double check while they're inventorying. Because again, I am trying to get away from all manual emails, all manual reminders. I want web checkout to run everything in my center. I'm even, for good note, going to add the same description to my instructions because I want them to be duly reminded. In this reminder, I'm simply reminding them to inventory everything and to add condition notes. They need to check our wheels and bearings, rails and tracks, brakes and locks, and a number of other pieces to our camera dollies. Okay. All right, I'm going to set the start date for this for tomorrow. Okay. And I'll hit create project. Now I'm going to add various inventory selectors. If I left this blank, I would just be inventorying everything. But as I mentioned, right, we have so much equipment that I want to narrow it down based on resource type. So I'm just going to add my camera dollies. And that's all I'm going to add. We have so many dollies. I don't want to add anything else. And I'm going to be looking for all camera dollies, whether they're online, offline, circulating or not. So I'll add that selector. Now I could add additional selectors. Say, for example, if I'm inventorying multiple categories of equipment or multiple rooms, right? But in this case, I just want the camera dollies. I'm going to keep it really simple. Okay. So I've added all of my selectors, and I'm going to hit open to open the project. Great. And then this tells me that description. So it gives me all of the instructions for what to do. And once my workers are ready, they can simply hit perform. It'll remind them all of those instructions I want them to note. Okay. And now they can begin inventorying their equipment. So I'll start scanning in barcodes. Now I can do this using a traditional barcode scanner. You and your workers can also use your cell phone. This is mobile friendly. It can connect to the camera on your device using this camera icon. So you can have your workers going through the center, everybody pull out their smartphone and just start scanning in items. Great. You may have noticed that as I'm scanning in items, they're turning green and getting removed from this to be scanned list. I can see everything that's been scanned in by selecting this green checkbox. And using the red X, I can see everything that is left to be scanned. In the event that something doesn't have a barcode, or maybe the barcode's damaged in some way, I can click the three dots and I can manually inventory it if I allow that. I'm going to edit the condition and just note barcode damaged, needs to be replaced. Okay. I'll save that condition note and then I'm going to manually inventory it. All right. Well, once you finish inventorying all of this list, it's likely very important for you to submit that inventory elsewhere. Many of our checkout centers, the department heads will require an annual inventory of all equipment. Well, in web checkout, we can run a number of reports that you're familiar with, but I can run a physical inventory report to see everything I've inventoried. I can select this resources tab and then go to physical inventory history to see everything I have just inventoried. I can adjust this report by using my result columns. For example, I've included the condition note because it's really important to me that my workers look through condition notes. I've made sure to add that. And then once this report looks good, I can export that CSV and then send it off to any administrator that needs to see it. Once that's done, I remember I did all of this because of my reminder ticket. I'm going to go back to tickets, my open tickets, go into that inventory ticket, and I'm going to resolve it. All right, and I'll select complete, and I'll put completed full inventory of camera dollies. And this way, I don't have to set any reminders in my Google Calendar, in my cell phone. I'm just letting my periodic maintenance ticket send me all reminders for my center, even something as simple as, hey, you need to kick off an inventory for your camera dollies. All right. Well, I hope that some of those tools were helpful for you to think about ways you can make your center more efficient. My goal whenever I meet a client is to take as much work off of their plate as possible. And that's why utilizing these features, as well as things like our automatic email messages, utilizing the patron portal, can really save you all a lot of time this coming year. As part of that goal, we are offering a special offer this summer. As you all saw in my demonstration, the projects module can really help you track approvals for your patrons, as well as all of their course materials that you need to sign off on for their projects. If you add the projects module this summer, you can get either the mobile inventory app or bundles. You can choose one of those and you will get it added to it for free. This sale will end the last day of August. So if you are interested in it, please email sales@webcheckout.net. You can do it right now to make sure you can take advantage of that offer. And of course, right, piggybacking off what Brittany showed, if you have not upgraded, you can schedule that right now by emailing support@webcheckout.net. Well, I'd like now to just open up this session for any questions. I think there were some questions in chat.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks so much, AJ. That was a great overview of existing and new features. Great. And we got some great feedback on just the proposing project or the project module in general, and even considering it to managing events. Yeah, absolutely. Anything that needs multiple, you need to collect information and you need equipment for, you can absolutely track that with projects. But the questions, yes, we had two questions. There's a question from Zach at Chapman. Can you add resource types during staging?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you so much for that, Zach. So I will invite Brittany or Jeannie to correct me if I'm wrong, but Zach, what the staging modal is for is you're saying I am now pre-packing this item. You can assign barcodes to it at that time. So as you saw me scanning it in, right, you can do that. Um, but during staging, it is looking for a specific resource. So at that point in the workflow, it is looking for you to either scan a barcode or manually add a specific item. Currently, you cannot add just resource types. If you wanted to do that, just use the workflow you've been using during your reservation to add in a new resource type.
Yep.
And can I ask a follow-up question to that real fast?
First.
And
So when you go through adding a resource via barcode during the staging process, does that add the resource type to the reservation at that point? So for instance, let's say I need to add a microphone real quick to an order. I hand it to the student, they test it, it's not working. Now I need to unstage that microphone and then rescan in a new one. Is that possible?
Gotcha. This is such a great question. So, um, to your point, I just added a resource of type microphone condensers, right? Let me just go ahead and save this. So currently you couldn't, if you stage this, it's going to look for a specific resource type ID, right? If you need to swap it out, just put it into edit reservation. So you'll click edit reservation. And then this is for those of you with the RRT module. So what you could do, Zach, is let's say it had that ID and you, to your point, something's wrong, right? Just check this box, put it back, click RRT. It's going to turn it back to a resource type. And then you could either scan in the barcode of that item, right? So you could assign it, or you could ask the system to do it for you. You could ask the system to pick it out by clicking ID. But to go back to your original question, the ability to switch it to RRT and ID is currently not available in Steam.
Okay, so if I've already pre-built my reservation, I stage everything, I have the ability to unstage with that little like rewind icon. But if
Great,
I have a built
great
reservation,
question.
scan in a new resource that I'm adding, that one will be not unstageable, correct?
Yep, this is such
Okay,
a great question. You're right. So if you've staged something like I just did, you can unstage using this button. Yep. And then to your point, what I would do is I would just edit the reservation, right? Make it an RRT resource again, and then scan in the new
okay,
item. Yep.
gotcha. Okay.
Great question. Hopefully that doesn't happen a lot, but those would be the steps to solve that problem.
thanks for the question, Zach, and thanks, AJ, for that overview. Greg from Webster had a question, and I believe this was when you were in staging, you were showing how you could return an item that was currently checked out
Mhm.
so that it could be staged in the event that the item wasn't returned properly in the application. Heaven forbid that ever happens. But um, so how does that differ from rapid return? And Greg, if I'm misrepresenting your question, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, so Greg, basically I mean it's the same functionality as rapid return in that you're scanning a barcode and returning an item. The distinction is we have built staging so that you rarely have to leave the screen. So rather like I could always close this out, hit rapid return and just scan that item back. But as part of our goal of just really simplifying your processes, you can stay on stage reservations, scan in the item, and then just return it here. So you don't have to leave this window. But, right, I mean, it's 2 clicks. You can always leave the window and do that. But the point is, there's no longer a need to do that if you're in the midst of staging. Yeah, Greg, feel free to chime in if that didn't quite answer your question.
And if I can just add to this return feature within staging. So the difference between returning through staging and rapid return, right? With staging, you're in a specific reservation, where in rapid return, you don't have to select a specific reservation or checkout. You can just scan in your items and web checkout will tell you what checkout it's being returned to. But adding the feature to be able to return items from staging, it was because, AJ, correct me if I'm wrong, and I believe this feature did come from School of Visual Arts, SVA in New York, where they have a lot of orders that turn over real quickly. So it was used for one class, and now they have to stage it for the next class. It's the same equipment. And so to expedite that workflow or make it more efficient, they're able to return and stage for that specific reservation. All right. Greg clarified that he missed the fact that you were working in staging. But if you have any other questions or need any more clarification, please feel to chime in. Feel free to chime in.
Absolutely.
All right. Nick from Dodge College at Chapman has a question related. Can there be an operator capability to disallow expedited add if that's enabled for the checkout center?
Yeah, that's a great question. I need to just double check our operator capabilities again.
I
Um,
don't believe that's an actual operator capability, and I believe staging is just a circulating part of circulating. I don't believe there's a specific capability for staging. And Brittany, do you have an answer?
So just to butt in to allow expedited add, that's a checkout center setting. So if it's enabled at the checkout center, any operator that can circulate, right, will be able to add
Yeah,
equipment through staging.
I guess my question is, let's say we want to enable expedited add, but I don't want student employees doing that during staging. Maybe I want the managers to be able to add resources. The concern is that the student employees will add items to resources, to allocations that the students shouldn't be getting. But maybe I want to be able to add it easily at staging, for instance. Does that make sense?
Sure does. Sure does, and when we're just making note of that, that would be a new feature at this point, as Brittany mentioned, if the settings enabled at the center, any operator who has circulation capability can expedite add. Um, Nick, is it because the students would be adding items that or your operators are adding items that the student requester isn't authorized for, or can you expand on the concern or the use case here to
Let,
manage?
let's say, for instance, the reservation is for 5 extension cords, but somebody accidentally pulled 6. A student operator might just say, "Oh, just add it to the order," and that would avoid any kind of approval process, right? Um, Assuming that we don't have a policy that limits it to 5. Uh, or, they scan some item that was left in a box that's not supposed to be part of the reservation and just, oh, I don't know what this error says. I'm just going to click the add the plus button.
Got it. And this is within your policy, so they're not violating any policies. There's no override required.
Right.
Okay. Okay. We can take that into consideration for future improvements to staging and operator capabilities, but right now it's you c if you can circulate, you can add it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm making note of that.
yeah, thank you, Nick. Any other questions? Fire away. Okay. Well, if they do come up, right, this is not our last session, so, get back to us. But now I will just pass it to Jeannie because we are about to move into a break.
Yeah, real important. Oh, one more question.
Perfect.
Question from Michael at Humber. Question about the equipment request feature. Are students going to now be able to see equipment they are not authorized to use in Patron Portal? They
Yeah, so
are. Go ahead, AJ.
Michael, this is such a great question. So it is up to you and your settings. So if you want students to see restricted equipment like you saw in my example, you can enable that setting in your checkout center settings to be able to see either restricted equipment or equipment they're not certified for, or you can keep it as you've been doing it where they cannot see that equipment. Now, Michael, one caveat to that, if they can't see it, they obviously can't request it, right? So if you want to allow people to request unauthorized or uncertified items, you will have to allow them to see that restricted gear.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a checkout center setting. Under your checkout center details, patron portal, there's a hide or unhide, unauthorized resource types, and then you can also enable requests. And there's a few settings to enable for requests or what you can allow your students to request.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a feature. I think that rolled out maybe 2 or 3 releases ago. Annie, just reading off your comment, Annie from Santa Clara University. So she likes the idea of staging, to ability to add to the order. Sorry, I'm reading in real time. You all can read that comment of two as well. Love the ability to add them at the time of staging, not just return them when they're back after the setup is complete. All right. Feedback noted. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Annie.
There is one more question. Or is there anything automated on web checkout for Google Calendar? I thought you mentioned something about that earlier. Maybe wrong. Yeah, our calendar feeds, which are right there, AJ. If you go to the checkout center and the feeds. Um,
Yeah, so and I think this is Limo, not sure your full name, but there's a number of feeds that you can use in the calendar. So to Jeannie's point, if you're a staff member and you want like say the allocation feed, so all allocations that are coming through your center to be in your Google Calendar, you can copy this feed, and you can actually like specify what properties will be on that feed in the set properties. So it is such a helpful feature. What I touched on specifically, let me go to my projects. Um, we can enable this calendar feed. So then when I, as the patron, let me just switch over to the patron. If I'm in my projects, I can go down, I could copy this calendar feed, put it in my Google Calendar, and now any allocation that I'm checking out to this project or that other people that have roles in this project are checking out, I can see that on my Google Calendar. So this is one of the many ways that we provide tools so your students and staff can just have reminders and you're not having to hound them. So if they're late for equipment, they have so many ways to remind them. You don't need to keep bending over backwards, right? Like they have the tools. So anyway, I hope that answered your question.
yeah. And I do believe with Google, with the ICS calendar feed pull, Google's so smart that it will learn how often activities hitting web checkout, and then based on that, I believe that's how frequently that it will update your calendar feed, your uh, input the reservations into your calendar. Whereas Outlook, you can actually control the updates. I believe like as early as like every 5 minutes, it can pull data from web checkout and display in Outlook calendar. Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions about new existing features? Any questions about the BOGO summer deal where I know there's chatter about projects being a great new option or new solution, and we'll talk more about that this afternoon as we discuss the green lighting solution. But now you can add projects as well as get mobile inventory, keep track of your physical equipment, or consider adding on bundles to expedite not only the user experience as students are adding items. We saw that many of you have larger orders, can bundle those items with one click. And then that will also expedite the staff experience. So you can go and grab an item off the shelf and not have to look for a specific item to scan out. So great options there for you all. If no further questions, we will be taking a break and we'll be joining back at 2 p.m. Central Time, so about a little over an hour and 10 minutes. And Nicole will introduce our new help site as well as some new content in our help site. And then we'll dive into our roadmap and what we're working on next. And then, of course, our breakout session talking about how can web checkout dramatically improve the student experience. And to make that session happen, we need all of you to participate. So enjoy your lunch and please do come back and we'll see you in about an hour.
Great.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Thanks, AJ.